sway.
Swim so free.
The Capitol Hill to
Soccer bopper.
Sometimes the world looks perfect, nothing to rearrange. Sometimes you just get a feeling like you need some kind of change. Standing tall.
What's up, everybody? Hey, welcome to it. Ryan, you missed your grand entrance, man.
I wasn't going to do it.
Oh, come on, dude. Welcome to another episode of Tune In Next Week. We are here standing tall. Well, actually, no, we're sitting, but it's episode 12 of Tune In Next Week. And if you couldn't tell from the super 80s classic intro, that is the introduction to none other than Perfect Strangers. Oh, by the way, what's up, Brian?
What's happening, John?
Here I am, like, starting the show by myself, and I look over there and you're sitting there. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should probably say what's up.
Hello.
Greetings.
Salutations.
I was just going to say salutations.
Well, I beat you to it.
Shit. All right. So we were doing Perfect Strangers, and this is going to be Season 4, Episode 3, a show entitled Aliens.
Aliens?
Aliens.
Aliens. Have you seen that image macro of it's a dude from the History Channel? It's like it's a meme at this point.
Yeah.
The dude from the History Channel, he's got wild hair and
Like Doc Brown wild hair?
like Doc Brown wild hair,
Okay.
and he's got this half opened eyelids, and his hands are just kind of like out by to either side of his face, and the caption is aliens.
Nice. I'm thinking of that one, or I'm thinking of like the Dos Equis guy. I don't normally watch movies, but when I do, I watch them about aliens or something.
Right. I don't always drink beer, but when I do, aliens. I don't always watch 80s TV shows, but when I do, aliens.
But you know what? We don't always record podcasts, but when we do it at JB Recording. Wanted to say thanks to the gang at JB Recording for being a great host to us. We are the resident podcast at JB Recording, the local recording studio where we make Tune In Next Week happen for you guys. So wanted to say thanks for that. Check those guys out. www.jbrecording.com.
Where else are we found?
Say, just so everybody knows, we are at Twitter at TuneIn_Next Week. We are on Tumblr. That's our main website, tunein-nextweek.tumblr.com. We're on SoundCloud, TuneIn_Next Week. We're on YouTube, and we need your guys' help. Please subscribe to us on YouTube so we can get ourselves a YouTube address. We need, I think, 100 subscribers. We got a few right now, so thank you for that in advance. But please get everybody you can to sign up and subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, fanfare. We are on Instagram, TuneIn_Next Week. So there's a video of me up there scaring myself and whatnot. So you're going to see lots of stuff from us on Instagram as well. So please follow us on there on TuneIn_Next Week. We're pretty much TuneIn_Next Week just about everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere except Tumblr.
Tumblr.
Yeah, we're the hyphen.
Right. Now, did we ever, was there someone with TuneIn_Next Week at Tumblr, or did we just screw that up?
I don't remember. I feel as if we went for it and it just wasn't available for one reason or another.
Okay. Well, either way, it kind of sets us apart. We're TuneIn_Next Week just about everywhere except Tumblr, where we're TuneIn-Next Week. So, hey, whatever.
All right, let's talk about this episode, Aliens.
Cool. That's right. So Season 4, Episode 3.
This aired October 28th, 1988.
It did.
How long this run again? Did you write that down?
Yeah, Perfect Strangers ran for 8 seasons, 1986 to 1993.
God damn. And I've watched so few of these episodes as well. It ran for so long.
I loved this show when I was a kid. I mean, just hearing that introduction theme song, really brought me back. And, I just remember watching Balki and just realizing how ridiculous he is. Realizing that he and Mark Lynn Baker look nothing alike, and there is nothing similar about them whatsoever. And I'm trying to remember how the pilot went when you meet Balki for the first time, and you realize that he claims to be Larry's cousin and blah blah blah. And it's making me want to go back and watch the pilot again, because when we're watching this episode, I'm sitting here thinking, how the hell are these two related?
Yeah. And the episode was easily digestible. There was a plot thread. There was a beginning, middle, end, and there was conflict. There was resolution, all that stuff.
And sappy music.
Yeah, yeah. There is. It was. I don't know how else to put it, but easily digestible. I honestly could have watched another 3, 4, 5 episodes easy, and have still been entertained.
And speaking of watching episodes, where can one watch these episodes?
Yes, the platform is only on iTunes. You can purchase on iTunes.
Okay, so you can buy it on iTunes for, what is it, $1.29 an episode?
Yes, $2.99 an episode.
Oh, that's not bad.
And you can buy $24.99 for the whole season.
Nice, that's not bad. Perfect Strangers ran from 86 to 93. And was Family Matters a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, or was Perfect Strangers the spin-off of Family Matters?
You had it right the first time. The character Harriet Winslow worked at the Chicago Chronicle, and the TV show Family Matters took that character, Harriet Winslow, and spun off the TV show Family Matters.
Right, and I'm so glad they did that, because Harriet is so funny.
Oh, she was one of my favorite parts of this episode.
Yeah,
she was
absolutely.
one of my favorite people in this episode, and she really had about a dozen lines. Wasn't big in this episode at all.
Yeah, but she had just enough sass to make the episode hilarious. And knowing now for sure, knowing that Perfect Strangers spawned Family Matters, it makes me like Family Matters even more. And I was a big fan of Family Matters when I was a kid. Yeah.
Speaking of Perfect Strangers, Family Matters, and all of that, this particular episode, again entitled Aliens? This was directed by Joel Zwick.
Now, who is Joel Zwick?
Joel Zwick is a TV and film director. He's directed episodes of Full House. He also directed the 2002 movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Really?
Well. Yes.
If you've seen that movie, Windex has a very special place in that movie.
It does? I forget. I saw it one time.
Watch it again. I'll just leave it at that.
I saw it one time.
Yes. So you definitely watch it again. It's a great movie.
All right.
I didn't realize it was directed by the same guy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, same guy. One last thing, written by Dale McCraven, who created the series, and also Paula A. Roth. Both of those individuals wrote this particular episode.
Excellent. And speaking of the episode, we've got a plot synopsis here, nice and concise. Larry watches a horror movie marathon on Halloween, and the next morning thinks that Balki has turned into an alien.
Alien? Turned into an alien.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it.
Yes.
So this was one of the first shows I've seen where there was no cold open. It went right into the introduction sequence.
You press play and it's standing tall on the wings of an eagle. Is that it?
Wings of a Dream.
Wings of a Dream. Oh,
who gives a shit?
Fuck it. Moving on.
Brian, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the dulcet tones of Brian.
Please don't.
Who is standing tall, sitting down at his microphone.
On the wings of a dream.
That's right. Cousin Brian over there.
Yeah, cousin John.
That's right. So we have a fantastic title sequence showing actual footage of Chicago.
Yes, shots of Chicago, also character shots of Balki and Larry interacting.
Right. We're not cutting that out. So yeah, it's iconic. This is one of the most iconic 80s openings. So even if you have no interest in watching the show, go on YouTube and do a search for Perfect Strangers intro. It's just great. It's
they
just
do
really
Chicago
cool.
justice.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. Much like Full House in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And Night Court in New York.
Yes.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, like all these great sitcoms took place in these major cities.
Yeah. The one thing is, some of these sitcoms,
Golden Girls was in Miami.
Yes. The city is a character in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what? I hate that. I hate when cities are characterized that way.
Really? Why is that?
It's just, it seems pretentious to me.
I think I'm going to disagree with you on that. I'm going to
Really?
disagree with you because I think, for one thing, it gives people an idea of a city's character if you've never been there. You know, for example, Frasier takes place in Seattle. I've never been to Seattle, but I want to go from what I've seen in Frasier. You know, and you get a taste for, they kind of talk about the city and whatnot. I mean, obviously, I realize I am not going to go there and meet Kelsey Grammer and whatnot. I'm not expecting to, but seeing one of my most favorite shows, I want to go and see where it took place, and I want to go to the Space Needle and all that stuff. Much like I would, I've been to San Francisco. I love it. I'm not not nearly the Full House fan that I am a Frasier fan, but I think it's great to see the cities being featured in these episodes. I've never been to Miami, but I've been to Florida and everything. Miami seems like a great city to go to also. Maybe I'll retire there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I happen to think the cities being a character in the show is great. But sorry, go ahead.
It is great if there are locales that are integral to the show itself. Now, granted, Cheers is a bar in Boston. You have what's the coffee shop in Friends?
Central Perk.
Central Perk.
Yeah. It
doesn't merit the description that the city is a character in the show if you're just relegated to several sets repeatedly throughout the course of the show.
Well, like in Seinfeld, the corner deli that they always hung out at doesn't exist.
Yes.
Much like in Frasier, Cafe Nervosa doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But there's still that they still feature the city. It's not like Gotham City that doesn't exist. Like Batman takes place in a fictitious city. There is no such thing as Gotham City, but places like Seattle and Miami and New York are real, and you can visit them.
You're right.
And Chicago is real.
Again, however, the show itself brings up certain locales as by the way, just to remind you that we're in New York. Oh, just by the way, just to remind you we're in Seattle. Just by the way, we're from the city takes place in San Francisco. When really, if you watch the show, a majority of the episodes, it's really not. It's not a feature. It's not a feature of the city.
Right. It's not about the city. It's in the city.
So because that is an unmerited quality of the series, I find it again pretentious to say, oh, the New York is like another character in of the show.
All right.
And I do see where some shows warrant that, such as New York and Seinfeld and
right.
and so on. Let's actually talk about the episode that we watched.
Yeah, exactly. So no cold open. We go right to our titles and Brian singing, of course. And we start out at the Chicago Chronicle, where we see Larry's on the phone trying to get people to come to his Halloween party, and he's sort of touting this 12-hour horror movie marathon, which I do enjoy horror movies. 12 hours seems like a bit much.
It does seem a bit much if you're invited to and are expected to attend the entire marathon.
Right, and you figure 12 hours, like what time do most parties start? Maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, or even later?
Late, I'd say 8, 9, 10 o'clock even.
So now you're talking 10 p.m.,
a house
12
party.
hours to 10 a.m.? I'm sorry, but I'm not watching 12 hours of horror and then leaving someone's house at 10 o'clock in the morning the next morning.
Well, hang on. This is most house parties, most apartment parties,
right.
What have you.
Right.
Is this something that they're watching on TV? Is this scheduled? Is this
yes.
scheduled on the cable, or is this? It is, because they got a TV guide and they were looking at it. So
right.
I would imagine this programming began, like you originally said, earlier on in the day, maybe noon,
right?
Maybe noon to midnight.
Yeah.
Now, if you're inviting people over to the party, it shouldn't be, hey, you're coming to the beginning, you're staying to the end, and that's the party.
Right.
I don't want you coming otherwise.
Right.
He should have been more loose about it. Hey, come when you can, stay for a couple movies. We'll be here all day. This is our house.
Or I
bring
would
a covered
say,
dish.
Yeah, or I would say, come over. We're gonna watch, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and you know,
Invasion
whatever.
of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, you know, we're gonna watch these 3 movies and get freaked out, and then you know the party ends at like 1 a.m. and everyone goes home and it's great.
Yeah.
You know, have a finite amount of time specified. You know, without expecting people to stay for 12 hours of horror movies, because 12 hours is just way too much.
Have a reasonable start time and a reasonable end time, and
Right.
granted, the party is centered around the horror movie marathon, but that really shouldn't be the only thing.
Right.
You should have other things going on. You should have drinks. You should have music, and
Exactly.
maybe that should be relegated to a different area of the apartment.
Sure.
But the living room, this is, if you're into watching the movies,
Right.
hang out right here.
Right. Exactly.
So poor party planners.
Exactly. So and right from the very get-go, you see we got Harriet being like Mama Sass.
Yeah, so Larry's on the phone inviting whoever is on the other line to the party. No, it's going to be cool. All right, fine, your loss. Talk to you later. Hangs up, and he talks to Lydia and Harriet. Hey, you girls want to come to the party? Now, do you recall Lydia's excuse why she couldn't go?
I can't remember, but I do remember her saying she had a gossip column to write. I don't know if that was her excuse for not going, or if there was something else going on with it. But I do remember she was not, she wasn't feeling it either.
Yeah, and specifically, I think the horror movie aspect of it itself. If it was just like a party,
Yeah.
just a Halloween party that wasn't centered around watching movies, then
Right.
I feel like that was the main thing of her not wanting to be there.
Right.
Harriet, though.
She said her mother-in-law was in town, and rather than watch monsters on TV, she'd rather see the real thing.
Baby. She called everybody baby.
I think if I get a lot of time on my hands at some point, which I don't expect to happen anytime soon, I am going to create a Harriet Winslow soundboard.
You really should.
Because I want to be able, I want to be able to hit like a button and just have it go, or something, because she is, when you think of sassy Chicago lady, I think of Harriet Winslow right there.
Instead of ending her sentences with periods, she ends it with the word baby.
That's right, baby.
Baby.
That's right. So now we find, so now Balki shows up, and he's wearing some kind of weird moose face thing.
Moose looked like a sheep to me.
Or whatever it is.
Some
stupid looking costume.
farm animal.
Yeah. And Larry's basically saying, "Oh, you should wear that at the party tonight." And Balki's like, "Oh, well, but people from work are coming." And Larry says, "No, nobody from work is coming.
Right.
It's pretty much going to be the two of them and their girlfriends."
I forgot that they had girlfriends.
Yeah, I think they're flight attendants.
Really?
Yes.
You've got a better memory than I do.
Yeah, they're flight attendants, because the one of them was actually wearing her flight attendant uniform on Halloween. One was dressed as a witch, and the other one was wearing her flight attendant uniform.
Yeah, their costumes were so weak.
Oh, completely.
Weak.
Balki clearly had the best one, and it was just because he was dressed like a chicken.
Yeah.
And I mean, cousin Larry was just wearing a striped shirt with red paint and a knife coming out the front.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, he's just playing himself stabbed, which like.
He had a hockey mask on his head though, like
Did he?
Yeah, he had
I missed that part.
like a Jason hockey mask.
Okay.
He wasn't wearing it on his face, but it was on his head, and he took it off when the girls got up to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're there. So nobody decides to show up to the party. Larry explains this to Balki, and Balki's not really understanding why. So he's like, "Well, we're watching horror movies, and nobody's really into watching horror movies."
Right.
Well, tell me about horror movies. Why would we want to watch horrible movies? And I really like this joke because he goes on to explain, no, not horrible, horror. They scare you to death.
Right.
Why would I want to be scared to death? I like the fact that Balki takes things literally.
Extremely literally.
Extremely literally. So there's Larry makes, what's his joke? He's like, well, sometimes why would people want to be scared to death? Well, they're not really getting scared to death, but people like to be scared, so they watch horror movies. If they really want to be scared, they'll move to New York.
Yeah, and I wrote that down, and I agree with that. New York can scare you fairly easily, and obviously I want to go on record to say I love New York. I'm from that area, but New York can be very scary if you've never been there.
Yeah, I'd say confusing more than, I guess it could be scary. I mean, there's always the potential of being mugged.
Well, yeah, that'll happen in any city, really.
Yeah.
I think it's thankfully New York has gotten a lot safer, these days. But if you're in a bad part of town, no matter where you're living, you have just as much of a chance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, so we're back at we're at the Halloween party. It's looking pretty lame, and now finally, the girls are getting ready to leave. And we've learned that some time has passed, and they've watched 6 hours of horror movies,
which to me is a lot.
Yes,
I've spent maybe that long or longer on the couch watching TV, binge watching,
right.
Seasons of TV shows.
Right.
I've watched a lot of the Hellraiser movies.
Yep.
I've watched all of them in maybe 2 sittings at once. So this is something that's not unusual to me. I'm no stranger to 6 hours of straight TV watching. But this is the 80s.
Yeah, but also you're watching different movies, so some of which may be more grotesque or more, stronger than others, or maybe more intense than others. If you're constantly watching episodes of like The Walking Dead or something, you kind of know what's coming. You know what style of show you're watching, and you sort of get the same amount of scare or the same amount of gore in each episode. Whereas you might watch one movie that's a certain type of horror and another movie that's a different type of horror and whatnot. And, it may be different levels of scare.
That's a very good point. And also at this point in I guess, movie history, people's constitutions they're not as desensitized as most people are today. This
Right.
is a pre-Saw world. This is pre-Scream,
Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project. All of those. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was around this time, though.
And I think this might have been pre... I think there's a genre for it. Is it psycho horror or psycho thriller where they scare you by not showing you things, and they scare you using other senses and stuff? Kind of what the Blair Witch idea was about, and what the Paranormal Activity movies were about.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock has been doing this for many years up to this point. Psycho being one of the most famous ones.
The birds.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the birds, but, same idea.
It's what you don't see that is more horrifying than what you do see.
Right.
So you've got Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You've got Balki, who is an innocent, good soul. And you've got their girlfriends who don't seem to be seasoned horror movie watchers. So I can accept that it doesn't take much to freak them out.
Yeah, and they give way after about 6 hours, and of course Larry is like, he's just getting reared up after 6 hours, and even Balki's like, okay, that's, I need a change of pace, and blah blah blah. So then the girls leave, and Larry says, okay, well, let's watch this next movie in the dark, and he flips the switch off, and then the two of them go with this back and forth thing. Larry, Balki wants to put the switch back on because he doesn't like being in the dark, but he doesn't want to admit that he's afraid of the dark. And there's a really funny joke right here. Balki just happens to be dressed up like a chicken, and Larry's like, "Oh, what's the matter? Are you afraid of the dark? Are you chicken?"
No, I'm not afraid of the dark. And he turns the light back on, and then Larry says, "Yes, you are afraid of the dark." Turns the light back off. Balki's like, "I'm not afraid of the dark." Reaches over, turns the light back on, and they just go back and forth. Now, I thought it was funny, but they dragged it out for too long.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
it would have been funny to do it about 2 or 3 times. They did it about 15.
They did it to the point where Balki eventually screamed until Larry turned the light back on, and Balki in his large red chicken outfit was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so then at this point, we're at the next day, the next morning.
Well, Balki is like, no, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed, and there's really nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to read The Little Engine That Could, clear my head. I'm going to sleep this one off.
Yeah.
And then Larry's like, all right, you're lost. I'm going to sit down and watch some movies.
Yeah, and he goes back on his horror spree.
Yeah.
So this happens. Now we're at the morning, and Balki's cleaning. And Larry comes up behind him trying to scare him, and Balki's like, no, you can't scare me.
Yeah.
And now at this point, it looks like it's a fairly ordinary morning, and the decorations are still up from the party and whatnot. And Larry's like, oh, I had a rough night and blah blah blah. So Balki says, well, oh no, Balki's cooking, and Larry goes in there and he says, oh, what are you cooking? And he names some kind of ethnic dish,
Misha,
Bork or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says, oh, it's pig snout with cheese or something. I mean, it just sounds completely appealing. And then he points to the stove and it lights on fire.
He points to the stove and a green laser beam. And now when I say laser beam, I mean a
laser beam. Like a lightsaber.
That's what it's supposed to be, but it looks like somebody froze the frame, took a Microsoft paintbrush and drew a lime green line in a zigzag from his finger to the stove.
Yeah.
And then quickly played the tape again, and the pan burst into flame at that point.
Right.
Would you agree that that's pretty similar to what happened?
I'd say so. Yeah, I would say so. And of course, Larry is dumbfounded. He says to Balki, how did you do that? You just pointed at the thing and it lit on fire. And Balki's like, no, I didn't. And he's just denying the whole thing. So at that point, Larry's like, okay, maybe I'm just imagining things. And he sits down and Balki says, well, here, I'll pour you a glass of milk. So he gets the milk out of the refrigerator and he starts pouring the milk, and Larry goes, oh, well, your dish is on fire. So while Balki's pouring, he lets go of the milk. The milk stays pouring and waits. It like stops time. Balki goes and addresses the other thing, comes back, grabs the milk, finishes pouring, everything's all done. And Larry is equally as dumbfounded. He says, how the hell did you do that? How did you get the milk to wait for you?
Did you ever see those magic tricks? It's an optical illusion, where the glass is there, the beer bottle the bottle is set to pour into the glass, and it looks like it's continuously pouring, but the glass is never filled up.
Yeah.
That's what happened. You turned around, walked away, and then came back, picked it up again, and there's a couple of little clever edits that they did to make it look like that he really, really did it.
Well, there could have been. There's a number of ways they could have done it, and I've also seen magic tricks where you take like 3 cups of the same dimensions on the outside, and you take a shot glass worth of milk or something, and you pour it in, and it seems to occupy the same amount of volume in each glass.
Yes.
So things like that. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of tricks they could have done, or trick photography, which I want to kind of talk about that at the end.
Okay.
And then he does another one where he puts his hand down and like a mug slides over to him and he drinks it, kind of like a,
yes,
like that. So obviously Larry is just dumbfounded and completely blown away by all this, and he every time he asks Balki, how did you do that, Balki's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Balki plays it off brilliantly. So they go over to work. Now they're at the office.
You're missing the last part.
What was the last one?
They Balki
yes,
plays it off.
Leaving.
Balki plays it off, and Larry's like, "All right, maybe I just didn't have enough sleep. Let's get ready for work. Let's go to work." So Balki is at the front door. He's putting on his coat. He's getting ready for work. Larry goes to the closet, opens up the closet. A huge, I guess, it looks like a huge Brussels sprout.
Yeah.
It looks like a huge Brussels sprout, falls out of the closet. Larry catches it. It's as tall as him. And he's like, Balki, is this a pod in the closet? Balki looks over and is like, I don't know what you're talking about. Turns around and walks through the front door without opening it.
Right. He walks through the closed door.
Just dematerializes and just like a ghost through the front door.
Right. So Larry is just beside himself. He just does not know how to deal with this. So now we're over at the office, and Larry's freaking out. And he's just sitting at his desk, and he's
just trying to get it together.
Yeah, and he pulls up a newspaper, and the newspaper has on the front page headline, it says, planet Mypos discovered behind Pluto.
Oh yeah. Did in the last scene did Balki mention Mypos? He did. We're going to a trip. We're going to Mypos.
Yes. Yeah, that was right in the beginning, right before the laser beam scene.
Right.
Yeah. So he said, well, I'm cooking this because we're going to Mypos. And,
Yeah.
Balki normally, aside from this episode, Balki is from this little island called Mypos.
Outside of Greece, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe it is. But anyway, so we're back at the Chronicle, the Chicago Chronicle. They're at work. Larry's trying to get himself together, and he's just trying to center himself. And then next thing we know, do the ladies walk in at that point?
They do.
Okay.
Harriet and Lydia both come in, and what's unusual about them is they're both wearing vests.
Right.
Unusual for these two fashionable ladies about town to be wearing these hideous looking vests.
Balki vests.
Balki vests.
Yes.
If you would. So
I would.
And you did. It's like a Balki vest, if I may.
So they're wearing Balki vests.
And Larry then begins to explain to Harriet and Lydia both what happened during the morning. I think Balki is an alien. He's here to take me away to planet Mypos.
Right.
And they're like, no, you're wrong. You're just freaking out. You stayed up all night watching movies, didn't you, baby? And Larry's like, I did, but...
Didn't she call him cousin by accident?
She did call him cousin.
Right.
And Larry's like, did you just call me cousin? No, baby, I didn't call you cousin. I called you baby.
Yeah, so this goes on for a couple of minutes, and then the two of them just start laughing, and they leave, and they do the same thing Balki did when they left the apartment that morning. They walked into the elevator shaft, or into the elevator, without the door even opening.
Like two specters, just...
Right. So we can only hope that they walked into an elevator parked on that floor, or they just walked in and plummeted to their deaths. We don't know.
In my mind, I feel that they walked through the door and then just
floated up to
the floor that they wanted to go to.
Yeah, imagine that. That's a hell of a way to save time. Like we as humans, we should have the ability to dematerialize, and that we wouldn't need elevators. We can just walk into an elevator shaft, float up to whatever floor we want to be on. We don't have to worry about pushing a button and waiting for the car to arrive and all that.
Kind of like the Flu Network in Harry Potter.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Or we could just teleport everywhere like Mega Man.
See, I'm with you on that. I would rather the teleportation for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other conversation.
It is. Moving on.
Speaking of floating, who floats down from the ceiling though?
Balki himself.
Captain
Mypos. So he floats down, and Larry says, "Oh, when did you get here?" And Balki just says, "Oh, I just dropped in."
Yeah, it's dropped in.
I love punny humor. I absolutely love I would watch this show just for the puns.
I like puns, but I can only take them in small quantities.
Puns are punny.
They are. This particular one though, he floats down and he starts talking to Larry, and Larry's like, oh, Mypos is on the front page. Let me show you Mypos. And he shows Balki the front page of the newspaper because he saw Mypos was discovered on there. And Balki's like, this says that
the city approved the annual budget or something.
Exactly.
Something really boring and whatnot. So that's when Larry just he flips out and he says, I get it now. You're an alien from another planet, and you've come down to assimilate all of us and take us back to the planet Mypos.
Yeah.
And then Balki just goes, yep, you're right.
Yeah. And then he starts hypnotizing Larry.
Yeah.
He starts saying stuff like, when the mama ship comes, you're going to get on top. Puts his hand over Larry's forehead. Using the force. Puts his hand over Larry's forehead. Says some stuff. Larry repeats it. Says some more stuff. Larry repeats it
in a Balki accent. Which I think accent. I thought that was hilarious.
The last thing he does, Balki has his hand over his forehead still, and he says, when you say who wants pig snouts, I will say I will. But then Larry's just like, no. Larry fights against it and then breaks free and says, no, I will not say I love pig snouts. I hate pig snouts.
and it's yeah, and Balki was like, "Oh, you're strong," or
Yeah.
he doesn't say the force is strong with you. I forget what he says.
He says that your will is strong, Earth
Something
Boy,
like
or
that.
something to that effect. And then he just floats up, and you can see the strings behind his vest lift him up.
Oh, I didn't notice that part.
Oh yeah, because he floated up and down a couple times during this episode.
Right.
And each time I was looking at like he's wearing a harness.
Oh,
This is a practical effect. He's floating up and down for real on the
Right.
set. So I was looking the whole time. At the very end when he was floating up and the camera stayed on him, you could see the back of his shirt being lifted up by the wires.
Gotcha.
And he was just floating up and down and just gave his maniacal, evil alien Balki laugh.
Right.
And that was really the end of the scene there.
Right.
So Larry he runs out.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're back. Now we're back at the apartment, and this is really funny. This part. So we're back at the apartment, and Larry is freaking out, and he runs into the apartment, and he's fumbling with the lock on the door, but he can't lock it. And he calls his girlfriend. I forget her name. What her name was? Jennifer. And while he's still on the phone with her, he's saying, "You got to come down here. You got to get down here right away." While he's saying that, there's a knock at the door, and it's Jennifer. And he opens the door. "Wow, you got here fast." And she said, "Oh, you sounded upset, so I hurried."
Yeah.
I think she and the other girl are roommates, and they live above them or something. But they're explaining the whole Balki situation. But Jennifer is like, "Oh well, why is that a bad thing?" And she opens her jacket to reveal she's got a Balki vest on too.
Oh, hang on. So he's like, Balki is
an alien.
Balki's an
yeah.
alien. You've got to believe me. And she's like, "Of course I believe you. He's right outside the window." And the camera goes over the window, and Balki's outside of the apartment window, just floating around.
Right.
Just
Which to any like passerby on the street below, that wouldn't look weird at all.
no, just a dude floating around somebody's
Right.
window.
Right.
So
Suspended by a crane, probably like off to the side.
So then Jennifer is like, "Well, it's not a bad thing." And she opens her robe up, and she's wearing a Balki style vest.
Right. And now at this point, Larry freaks out even more, and then everyone walks through the door, through
Every
the closed door.
character in this episode.
Yeah. So Harriet, Lydia, the other girlfriend, they all walk through the door, the closed door, wearing the Balki vests, and they're like, "Come on, join us." And Larry's like, No, I'm not going to join you. And then Balki
Floats down from the ceiling.
descends from the heavens and pulls out a folded vest, and he's like, "Come on, join us, come back to Mypos with us," and blah blah blah. Larry starts running around, and everyone is like, cousin, do it, because they're saying everybody on Mypos is cousins. Mm-hmm. They're just really hamming it up. And then this is the part where I hadn't seen this episode before, but I was expecting it to be a whole dream sequence, and you find out it was a dream. And Larry was laying on the couch. He had fallen asleep, and he had this really bad nightmare that all this stuff just happened.
When they cut from the apartment scene with everybody chanting cousin and Larry's running around, when they cut from that scene to the scene of Larry laying on the couch,
Right.
still dressed in the costume from the night before,
Right.
Balki laying over him, when they cut between those two scenes, what I don't remember, was it like the watery dream sequence cut?
Yeah.
So it was like a slow fade out,
Yeah,
and
like a dissolve.
like a desert mirage.
Sure,
kind of.
yeah.
It was just kind of watery,
Yeah.
blurry, and then one scene to the next. Okay.
Right, exactly. So now Larry is coming to, and he's explaining that he had a nightmare, and blah blah blah, saying that Balki was trying to assimilate him and take him to Mypos and all that stuff.
Like a pod person.
Right, exactly. And then this is where like the episode feels like it's drawing to a close. You feel like we've had our laughs, and we did the funny thing, and as just like it did with Full House, there had to be some kind of like air quotes moral of the story, or there had to be some sort of like sappy moment, and that happened at this point because Larry was saying, well, maybe I went a little overboard on the horror movies, and maybe I shouldn't have been so gung ho on the horror movies.
He confirms Balki is really Balki first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But he asked him a whole bunch of questions of what would you do if someone stole your money and kicked you in the shins,
and said that your mother wears army boots.
right?
So then Balki confirms that he's a nice guy still. It's like, well, he stole my money. I will spend it wisely. If you kick me in the shins, you should join a gym so you can find a positive way to expel that energy. And if you said that my mom wears army boots, you've seen her? Does she look good? How's she doing?
Yeah.
So that's that's Larry's test to be sure that Balki is the Balki that he knows and loves.
Right. And
That music, though.
God, that music was so bad. Because right after that, I looked at you and I said, cue cheesy music, and instantly that's when the music started.
A half second, you called it to...
Yeah. And, I don't think Night Court had that. Night Court didn't have a cheesy music section.
It may
I don't think it did, because I know we would have harped on it if it did.
You're probably right.
Yeah. But it was... Oh, my God. It felt so... forced. It felt so out of place. It was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so heavily into horror movies because it'll make me think bad things. Blah 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 blah. Because thinking of Balki as an alien from another planet is so bad. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, that was Balki's reasoning was it at the end of was it the end when all the girls were in there saying cousin? Watching horror movies begets bad thought. No, it was at the Chronicle still.
Right.
He was explaining why he was evil to Larry before he started floating up in the air.
Right.
He's like, well, the reason I'm so evil is that I watch horror movies, and you said they'll go in one eye, come out the other eye, but they didn't. They're in my head now, and they're paying rent, and they're making me have bad thoughts, which beget more bad thoughts, so...
Right. But that's you could say that about anything. You could say that comedies would beget comedic thoughts, but think different things are funny to different people. Like tripping somebody and making them fall might be funny for someone to watch it, but it wouldn't be funny for the person being tripped. So I don't necessarily agree with harping on the genre of horror movies.
No, and with anything, moderation is going to be,
of course,
the key to optimal enjoyment.
Right.
But I disagree with the message that horror movies will beget bad thoughts.
Right. They seriously just needed filler for the cheesy music section, because they were probably like, okay, we need to do the positive moral section of this show. What are we going to talk about? Oh, let's make it just horror movies are bad.
Kind of sloppy and thin.
It was. But thankfully, that was the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And thus, roll credits, and here we are. We made it through yet another episode. But I enjoyed watching this. It was funny. It was great to be taken back to that something I was really into as a child. I
did too. As much as I may have gone on this episode during this, I really liked it. I would watch more. I actually want to watch more.
I'm going to as well. I'm gonna do some shopping on iTunes, I think.
This show, again, I watched a few episodes. This wasn't a show that I had a lot of exposure to. I was aware of it. I knew about it, but wasn't one that really loomed large in my TV history.
Yeah. So let's talk about highlights and lowlights.
You go first.
I would love to, because I have two highlights for this one, because they're both, in my mind, the tops of the episode, or the best parts of the episode. Number one being Harriet's sass.
Sassy Harriet.
I had forgotten how much fun Harriet's character is.
She's the best.
And I want to watch more of this so I can quote her, because she's just so funny.
Just end your sentences with baby and you're good.
That's right, baby. The other one, which I think is really my primary highlight, is the production of Balki's little tricks. Whether it was, Balki's flying, his igniting the fire on the stove, the pouring of the milk, all the little bonus things that they wouldn't normally do in a typical production of an episode of Perfect Strangers that made it unique to this specific plot. I thought it was just really cool because, I mean, other than you said you saw the harness, cables for lifting Balki and lifting Balki up and whatnot. I didn't even notice that. I wasn't necessarily looking for it either, but everything else seemed pretty seamless. I thought for being what was this, 1989? 1988. Just really well done because it's certainly not dealing with a big budget like a movie house. Probably not making this on that high of a budget. I thought it would look pretty seamless.
I saw a lot of the seams, but I enjoyed all of the effects. The camera work that they did there, I saw the edits. I saw some of the things that they did to try to hide it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Yeah. The laser from the fingers, really liked that. I thought it was well done considering it for what it was. Right. The flying up and down, the Balki, Harriet, and Lydia's walking through walls.
That was so
like
cool.
I like that also.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were gonna, before I go into my highlights, you mentioned you were gonna talk about camera edits. This should be a good place to jump in with that.
Yeah. So I thought we would kind of see if we can figure out how they did a few of those, Balki tricks. So, you talked about the magic trick of the endlessly pouring milk.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
To my knowledge, that is a glass that has liquid in it with a clear plastic tube that runs from the bottom of the glass to the pouring bottle.
Right.
So the bottle is suspended by the clear plastic tube, and the tube is works as suction. It sucks the liquid up from the glass, and the liquid then pours out over top of the tube, so it looks like it's continuously pouring.
I see. Okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Now,
and then they may have just hung it in place or something, or figured some way to rig the bottle so it hung there.
Yes.
They probably used the same type of cabling for what they used to fly them with, or something where they suspended it. Now from the ceiling.
They did 3 edits that I noticed. Balki holding the milk and the glass. They did a quick edit where he lets go, and it's now the trick bottle and glass, or the trick carton and glass.
Right.
Then he turns around, he comes back. There's actually, I misspoke. There's 4 edits. The next edit is him holding them again, and then the last edit is from the other side of him, where he's now holding real carton and real glass.
Right.
So there's 4 quick edits that if you're really looking at the props that he's holding, you can see the seams of him holding a glass and carton, the prop, and then the glass and carton again.
Okay. I think that's I'll go with you on that, because I mean I didn't, I watched it without looking for those types of things, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, those kind of edits, I mean, I don't have experience doing those edits myself. I don't do video editing, but I have an eye for those quick edits. If you've got like a 3-4 camera show, I keep an eye out for continuity errors.
Okay.
Characters that have their hands in different positions between takes, characters that have a facial expression during one shot and the next shot their facial expression isn't exactly the same. I kind of keep an eye out for that kind of thing, and it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
There are Academy Awards and there are awards for really great editing, and that's one of the things that I particularly look for. It's one of the things that I'm interested in more so than the great acting and that thing. I look for good lighting. I good for good editing. Yeah, that's one of the things I have an eye for.
Nice. And then we already kind of talked about the laser beam type of thing. Just kind of compositing you said sort of Microsoft Paint.
It was fun. It looked like somebody had taken just like a a paint tool, a marker tool, and just like drew a line in neon green.
Well, or what I think they could have done was they could have had Balki standing in one place, and then rolled camera on him standing still, and then just did a wipe across the screen.
Yes.
And then while he would be holding something that was that lime green kind of thing, and then by having the camera in the exact same place, doing that wipe, and then having a certain area of that other film exposed briefly, it would have the illusion of creating that beam. And then all they would do is put a little pyrotechnic thing or something on there that would have the the stove lighting up on fire.
The frying pan's the easy part.
Yeah.
You just like put that, just light that up on fire.
Right.
The laser beam though, that's I can see them doing it that way. It's
and I'd be interested. I mean, what are the odds of someone who worked on that show hearing our podcast? But I mean, if they do, I would love to know if we're right or if we're pretty close. By all means, reach out to us. And here comes a whole slew of social media things, by the way. At TuneIn_nextweek on Twitter, tunein-nextweek.tumblr.com, tunein_nextweek on SoundCloud and Instagram. Coming soon to Facebook.
I have a highlight.
Please do.
My highlight is Balki standing up to Larry's bullying.
Go ahead.
So the scene where they are watching the horror movies, the girls get up and leave, and Balki's like, you know what? I'm not really feeling this. I want to go to bed. Larry is... Granted, I've said this before. I haven't seen very many episodes.
Right.
However, Balki loves his cousin and always takes Larry's lead. And sometimes this will lead to Larry learning a valuable life lesson. Sometimes this will teach Balki a valuable life lesson about social skills, living and interacting with people in America, what have you. You get the idea.
Yeah.
My particular highlight is Balki standing up to Larry. Larry's like, hey, we planned this party. It's turned out to be a failure. Let's at least you and I enjoy it. This is a thing that people do. This is a thing that I want to do with you. So stay up with me. I'm gonna use my social currency with you as like the leader of our little duo here.
Right.
Stay up with me and watch this movie. And Balki's like, no, I don't want to admit to you I'm scared. I don't want to be less in your eyes, but I'm scared. I don't want to be up. You afraid of the dark, Balki? No, I'm not afraid of the dark. And they do that back and forth thing, But really proud of Balki when he puts his foot down. Like, no, I am scared. I don't want to be more scared. I've got to work tomorrow. I need to clear my head because this is scary to me.
Yeah.
This is scary to me. So no, I will not stay up with you and watch movies. You do it on your own. Sorry to disappoint you, cousin. I'm going to bed.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. And Balki disrobes from his ridiculous turkey costume and then goes to sleep. So yeah, my highlight was Balki standing up, one of the rare times, standing up to Larry.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that, and I think that's a good highlight. So I've got a low light.
Let me hear your low light.
My low light is the forced, cheesy moral of the story section at the very end.
Yes.
We could have done without that because I didn't think it was really necessary to harp on the, kind of what we were talking about earlier, harping on the horror genre as, horror movies will inspire bad thoughts. No, horror movies are meant to entertain you by showing other people that manifested bad thoughts. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to, but this means that, any genre of movie can inspire any genre of thoughts, thus making the argument irrelevant.
It was a really sloppy message.
Very sloppy.
I get that they had to wrap up the episode in a neat little bow.
But they could have without this little section.
They could have, or they could have done it differently.
Yeah.
Also, they didn't really have to say, maybe I shouldn't have stayed up watching movies so late,
or maybe I could have been more open-minded, and if people made suggestions, maybe consider other people instead of just thinking for myself, or whatever.
Right. How selfish was it for them to organize a party that the requisite is you've got to come and watch 12 hours of movies with us.
Yeah.
Even their girlfriends tapped out after 6 hours.
Right.
Can't do it. Not going to do it.
Right. I don't blame the girlfriends either.
No.
No.
I would have been out. I would have
Yeah.
come through. They should have had like a revolving door kind of policy. Yeah, stay for what you will. Stay for how long as you can. Understand if you leave, but this is the party. This is the expectation.
Right.
They should have. It was a poorly planned party.
It really was.
I can't say that enough.
Yeah. So, how about you? What was your low point?
My low light was a combination of the Halloween costumes and the vests.
Nice.
So the Halloween costumes were poor. Poor.
Like dollar store.
That's being generous. So first off, at the top of the, now please correct me if I'm wrong. At the top of the episode, Larry's on the phone and he is trying to elicit people to come to the party.
Right.
He's not wearing a costume, and I'm under the assumption that it is Halloween based off of Balki in this scene.
Well,
He's
no
not
one else was wearing a costume.
That's what I'm saying. He's not wearing a costume. Harriet's not wearing a costume. Lydia's not wearing a costume. Only Balki's wearing a costume.
Right.
So I love Balki's effort. I love just the fact that he's wearing a mask. I love the effort that he's wearing a costume to work. Part two of this is at the party itself, we've got Balki's girlfriend who's wearing the witch's costume.
No, I think she was the flight attendant.
She was the flight attendant?
And then Larry's girlfriend was the witch.
Is that not her job, though?
No, that's her job.
That's her job. So
to be a flight attendant.
Her job is to be a flight attendant. Probably the laziest of them all.
Yes.
She showed up to this Halloween party in her work uniform. That's not your costume. It's not your costume. And Jennifer wearing a witch, I appreciate her effort.
Yeah.
But however, it's just a black robe and a dollar store witch's hat.
Right. And I think she painted her face too. She looked pretty pale.
I don't...
Yeah, she looked pretty pale. I'm fairly certain.
Well, I believe that was just her natural skin tone.
I don't know. I mean, we'd have to go back and look again at the episode.
These costumes were... the only costume I liked, Balki's. Again, Balki.
Right.
A big turkey suit.
Like he
big
literally
bird outfit.
He either made the thing himself or he went to a costume shop and bought. Like, but no,
This is professional grade.
I was just gonna say I'm gonna go so far as to say he went to like a theater costume design shop or like a theater company and got a chicken suit. This was not something you would buy at a dollar store or Party City or something. This was like clearly a professional costume.
Yes.
So I admire his enthusiasm there.
Larry's costume, I comes in second place.
He just ruined his shirt and stuck himself with a knife.
He did, but he had that hockey mask also.
Yeah.
He had a couple accessories going on there. The knife in the chest, he had the mask on his head.
Right.
He at least gets second place for effort, though it's a far second place to Balki.
Extremely.
I gotta say, I am disappointed with the level of costumes.
Yeah.
So, in addition to that, this is like a secondary low light.
Right.
The vests, they were all terrible, low cut 4-button vests, and they were 2 parallel buttons. These were just terrible vests that no one should ever own, much less wear.
Agreed.
So yeah, my low light was the poor costume choices. No, let me rephrase that. Poor costume effort.
Yeah.
And the vests.
Okay, excellent. Now, one of our other little bits we can do, let's do Where Are They Now?
All right, I have Mark Lynn Baker right here.
And go ahead. So what is Mark Lynn Baker up to?
Mark Lynn Baker has been in quite a few things. He's mostly credited as an actor, but he has done some directing. He was in a 1979 film called Manhattan. This was just about a divorced television writer. Did dating a teenage girl. He's also been in My Favorite Year. Most recently, he's been in the TV show The Leftovers on HBO. He's been in one episode credited as himself, Mark Lynn Baker. His directing credits, you may be surprised to learn, are going to be an episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper. He's also done an episode of Step by Step, as well as an episode of Family Matters.
Interesting.
Yes, all of these shows are slated to appear on TuneIn next week.
Absolutely. So definitely make sure to keep your eye out for those. Okay, so and what is he doing now? Is he doing anything interesting now?
No, the most recent things he's done are mostly TV series. He's done The Good Wife in 2012. He was on a short film called Bereavement, 2014. The Leftovers is the most recent thing that he's done. Cool.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about Balki. I'm going to talk about Bronson Pinchot or Pinchot, however you say it. But anyway, he's been busy, actually, interestingly enough. So Perfect Strangers kind of fell right in the beginning of his career. He started back in 1983. I'm looking at a different section here. Okay, so Bronson started back in 1983. Risky Business was his first role. Then he was in the first and third Beverly Hills Cop movies. The first Beverly Hills Cop movie in 1984. And then he did some other stuff. And then he was actually in Perfect Strangers from 86 to 93. And then he kept on working pretty much right on after that. He looks like he took a break from 93. Oh, no, he kept on going. So 93, Beverly Hills Cop 3 in 94. 95 he was in, he did some voice work. So it looks like he pretty much never stopped working, which is really cool because he's a very versatile actor. I've seen him in so many different things, and he seems like he's always got some wacky accent, or at least from what I've seen. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen him doing anything without some sort of accent, but then again, he's been on so much that I'm sure he's done some serious acting too. But definitely check him out in the Beverly Hills Cop movies. He plays a guy named Serge, and it's a hilarious, really hilarious set of movies. He was in True Romance and Courage Under Fire also. Nice to know he's still around, still working. And he's actually got two things in process. Something called The Strike, where he plays a guy named Carlo, and something called Double Play that's coming out in 2016, where he plays a guy named Bob. So he's coming out in some new stuff. Cool. So that's cool. And that brings us to the very end of our humble little episode of Tune In Next Week. So thanks very much for checking us out. We really appreciate all your listeners out there, people subscribing to us, checking us out. And, please feel free to tell your friends if you like what you hear. We love doing these things for you. We're grateful to be here for you guys. So thanks very much. And as always,
tune in next week,
because who knows what'll be happening next week.
Sometimes the world looks perfect, nothing to rearrange. Sometimes you just get a feeling like you need some kind of change.